All right, everybody, welcome back. We got one more defensive end video today, and then tomorrow we're going to go to the sleepers. But we still got to get through round three. And the way I see it, there are three of these defensive line prospects that are likely to go in round number three. Again, defensive end from the perspective of a 3-4 defense, typically speaking. First round three guy we're going to look at here is a guy who just barely makes the cut on the aggregate, Leonard Taylor III. Miami Hurricane, 22 years old, still relatively young. Got a nice frame, 6'3.5", 303 pounds, 33 and 7/8 inch arms, 9-inch hands, so the measurements are good. He's got size. He could add a little bit of weight if he wanted to, which I like. The arms are good. The testing, not so much, which is disappointing because I think one of the draws of Leonard Taylor was that he's a freak athlete in theory. And the only area he did really well in were his jumps, and those weren't great. He had a 71st percentile broad jump. He was below average in speed and acceleration, and his three cone showed lackluster change of direction, so that was disappointing. Big boards, Tankathon and CBS like him. CBS has him in the second. ESPN's really down on him, though. They have him in the fifth. Aggregate has him just barely in the third round. They have him literally 101st, which is, I think, just a handful of picks before round three ends. And you look at the numbers, you can kind of see why. He exploded onto the scene in 2022, played well, 10.5 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, a pick, really good PFF grade. And then 2023, it just didn't really go. Tackles were down, tackles for loss were way down. He was making way fewer plays in the backfield. And his PFF grade was still good, but it fell off significantly. So he didn't have that big junior year leap. And Leonard Taylor was somebody who was expected to take that leap in 2023, and it just didn't quite happen. And he was part of a Miami team that I think was a little disappointing last year. There are some good things about him for sure. He shoots gaps effectively. He's got the ability to come out of his snap quickly and shoot a gap to go make a play in the backfield. He can stack and shed really well because he's got the long arms and he's got the strength to get blockers off of him. He's got some pass rush moves. He doesn't just have a basic set. He does have some things that he can do from the interior to get pressure. There's also some bull rush potential because of his long arms and his size. I think that he can develop a bull rush. Not that it's there yet, but I think it's coming. He's got an explosive first step coming out of his stance as well. I know it didn't show up great at the combine, but I do think he does have some explosion in his body. So, hey, not against a lot of the stuff here, but he never really put it together in college. He was super inconsistent. Every element of football that he needed to do well in was just up and down. Leverage stuff, shedding stuff, assignment stuff, filling your lanes, all this stuff, just super inconsistent. He has to learn how to use his hands a little bit better than he does, like when he's actually engaged with a lineman trying to hold his ground. He needs to learn how to use his hands more consistently, and the testing numbers make you wonder if he's the great athlete that he was being billed as coming out of high school. Maybe he's really not all that. I know he's over 300 pounds, but these numbers still aren't good enough. So there's a lot of work to be done here to get him to his potential. And he might not even be that great, even if you do get it out of him. Like, look at these testing numbers, do have to give you pause. Is this the guy we were being advertised about even 8 months ago when he was supposed to be a potential future first round pick? So I'm a little cold on this one, even though I think the potential is there. There is some interesting potential here. I feel like he's a fourth round flyer as of right now. So a little bit cold there, but I could see some people being more into him than I am. Next guy is Ruke Orhorhoro. Ruke Orhorhoro of Clemson. One of the best names in this draft. Also a pretty fun player, 22 years old. 6'4", 294 pounds, so he does have the frame to add a little more weight if he wants to. Long arms, 34 inches, 9 3/4 inch hands. The testing was great. Had an awesome 40, awesome 10-yard split, really good vertical, phenomenal broad jump. 9'8" for a interior defensive lineman is awesome. 29 bench press reps is also well above average, so he crushed the combine and I think did himself some favors. A lot of big boards have him in the second, some have him in the third. ESPN has him just outside the third, I think, so they're a little bit down on him, but overall he did creep his way up into the very top of the third round with that combine performance on the aggregate. And I could see that. I could see him sneaking into the second too, but for the moment, holding steady in the third. Production over the last 2 years has been good, consistent. About 48 total tackles, 16 for loss, 9 sacks, and 5 passes defensed. Good PFF grades. Clemson's defense did underachieve a good amount last year, I felt like, but there's definitely a good player here with Ruke. I'm just going to call him Ruke for the rest of this video. He plays with an aggressive edge. I think there was one scout that referred to it as like a nasty streak. You like to see that kind of stuff in these defensive linemen. Even though he's 6'4", he's really good at understanding leverage. He gets low, he sinks the hips, and he wins battles that he normally wouldn't win because he's sinking his hips. He's a great athlete, and that's going to translate really well in the right defense with the right coaching. He's built very well. Like, you can see that at 294, at 6'4", you could add weight, and he would obviously lose some stuff, but it wouldn't be like a problem because he's got additional stuff he can add onto his frame. He's very fast off the snap of the ball. He's very quick at going from being in his stance to colliding with the offensive lineman. And he not only, these are not just testing numbers, he's got great movement skills. He moves laterally, he changes direction, he does these things, and sometimes he almost looks like a linebacker doing it. So he's got great movement skills. It's going to help him doing twists and stunts and all kinds of interesting stuff. Coverage, maybe. So I really like a lot of things about Ruke. I do think that he'll get dominated by double teams, which again makes me wonder, how is it going to work in a 3-4? He is raw as a pass rusher. He doesn't have the set of moves that you would like. He doesn't have the set of swim moves and up and under moves and rip throughs. It's all a little bit unrefined at this point in time. He doesn't shed blockers as efficiently as you would like. He does work through it, but it takes him longer than you would like. Obviously, the potential for him to be a great block shedder is there because he is so long. But right now, he's got some stuff to work on there. Consistency problems remain. He is a younger guy, though, so it's not the end of the world. And not really a bull rusher. Probably not ever going to be much of a bull rusher. Just doesn't have the strength. He doesn't win with strength most of the time. He wins with agility and athleticism, which is phenomenal. So I think that he's a guy who will take a year or two to get to a good place in the NFL. But I I like him a lot. I like Ruke Orhorhoro well. I don't know if it's a fit for a 3-4 because of the strength not being there to hold up against double teams, but theoretically, if you feel like a player like this fits in with Mike Macdonald, then I really like Ruke. So I would bite on him in the second round in a vacuum. And again, that would have to be whether it would be dependent on if it works in this defense, but in a vacuum, I'm all over it. One more guy here, one more guy. This one's a tricky one. Maason Smith of LSU with 2 A's, Maason. 21 years old, so very young. 6'5", very tall. 306 pounds, bigger guy. 35-inch arms. Wow, I'm in love already. 8.5-inch hands. How do you have 35-inch arms and 8.5-inch hands? That's not right. That's seemingly impossible, and yet here we are. Had a pretty decent combine, decent 40, not a very good 10-yard split, good vert, good broad, okay 3-cone, blef, 20-yard shuttle, excuse me. So whatever. Big boards, little all over the place. Walter Football loves him and has him in the second. Tank has him in the third. So does ESPN. CBS and PFF have him in like the fourth or fifth. They're not really big fans of him, but aggregate has him in the middle of the third round or so. Honestly, with how disappointing his 2023 season was, combined with the fact that he basically didn't play in 2022, I kind of feel like this guy's going to fall, but there's also some very intriguing potential here. Over the last couple years he's played, his production has been okay, but 2023 was a big make or break year for him because Maason Smith was originally playing on the edge, and he moved into the inside for LSU last year, or 2 years ago, got hurt, tried to move again this year, and it wasn't that good. 28 tackles, 4.5 for loss, 2.5 sacks, 2 passes defensed, mediocre PFF grade. It's not awful, but he didn't explode. I remember Maason Smith was the #1 defensive lineman on big boards before the season started, and it just never went anywhere. So the size, the frame, the arm length, the athleticism, He looks like a superstar. He looks like a guy who should be a phenomenal interior defensive lineman in the NFL. This looks like a guy who should be Calais Campbell. This looks like a guy who should be one of those really lengthy guys who just always dominates in the middle there. He does shoot gaps fairly effectively, I think. I think he's a good gap shooter. He holds up against the run. He's quick off the snap. He goes real quick from being in his stance to being engaged in the play. And in theory, this guy, of all the guys we've looked at so far today, might be the best pure 3-4 defensive end fit. Again, that's requiring a certain type of 3-4, but a traditional 3-4 end, Maason Smith may be. So there's some stuff that I actually like here, but he never really put it together at LSU. The injuries obviously killed him, and maybe he'll never come back from that injury. Who knows? It was a big one. It knocked out basically his whole year. Now, you could maybe think that 2024 is the year he finally gets it together, but then he's going up another level to the NFL. It's like, that's going to wipe that out. Doesn't really have any kind of technique to speak of in terms of like stacking and shedding. He doesn't really have consistent hand technique or just any of that stuff. It's not very there. He loses leverage a lot because he's so tall. He's not a bull rusher, even though he looks like he plays one on TV. And it's going to take a while because he didn't play enough in college at this position. You're going to have to give him a lot of experience just to have a chance. So this is tempting, but he's not a good player yet, and I'm not convinced he's close to becoming one because it didn't really ever happen in college. So I'm being torn apart on this one. This is tough. Um, I didn't even really have like a round that I put him on because I couldn't figure it out. Um, I'd say fourth round. I can't go third round because he just isn't good yet. It's tough though. I'll talk to you guys later. Go Hawks. Let me know what you think down below. Talk to y'all later. More videos coming later, but that'll do it for the defensive ends today.